Hello, and welcome to the Stem Cell Healing Institute podcast. In case you have any questions regarding this program, please write us at info@stemcellhealinginstitute.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Hello and welcome back to the Stem Cell Healing Institute podcast. We are here with Dr. Sara Figueredo. She's the research and general director of the institute, and she is here with us once again. Hello, doctor. How are you doing today?
Hello, Louise. Thank you so much. I'm great. And yourself?
I'm doing great. When I asked you what topic we were going to talk about, and you gave me the topic, that was like a very interesting topic because we always worrying about getting older, and that's one thing we cannot avoid. But today we're going to speak about the longevity and how stem cells can actually help. It's actually like an anti-aging procedure that we can do. So I found this very interesting topic doing my research, which is hormesis. And that has something to do with the stem cell treatment, right?
Yes. So that's a that's a very interesting word because I get asked about this a lot. So in the topic of longevity and anti-aging at the cellular level, now we're not just talking about Botox and fillers and topical skin lasers and things like that. We're talking about anti-aging, literally turning back the clock at the cellular level. And this word that you bring up, hormesis, Louise, is a very interesting topic because there are different forms of hormesis. First of all, let me define what hormesis is. Hormesis is the minute exposures of stressors and toxins to the cells that actually create a level of resilience in the cell and in the telomeres of the DNA and in the mitochondria that help prolong the cells and literally undo damage and help regeneration of the body. Now, different types of stressors and toxins that what we mean by that are, so we can keep it really simple. Things like berberine is a hormetic agent. For instance, it's an herb that affects directly the mitochondria of each cell. The mitochondria of our cells are the sort of the powerhouse, everything that where ATP and energy is created, the energy powerhouse. So we have things like berberine, and then we have things like intermittent fasting, which is a form of a stressor. It's a good stressor, but it is a stressor. And these stressors are, so we have intermittent fasting, we have cryotherapy, which is plunging yourself into a bath of ice water, or at the end of your shower, you rinse off with two or 3 minutes of ice cold water, and that is a form of cryotherapy. And these are all types of these minute stressors that help literally reverse aging and help the mitochondria of each and every cell in order to prolong the telomeres of the DNA and to regenerate damage. So these are just some forms of hormetic agents that we use, and that's just the beginning where the Stem Cell Healing Institute is involved, because we incorporate all of these as well as actual stem cells in the form of perhaps a total body rejuvenation IV with mannitol, along with all of our other adjunctive therapies like growth hormone therapy, key mineral and herb therapy like berberine, as well as oxygen therapy and nutritional IV detoxes. So it's a very complex field. There's a lot involved, and we incorporate all of these modalities at the Stem Cell Healing Institute.
And I suppose, doctor, since Well, getting older is actually the result. I will say the accumulation our cells or cellular, can I call it genes, or cells that get damaged. That's why we get older, right?
That's right. That's right, Louise. So, damaged. So various factors. So yes, absolutely, damage just from wear and tear and the toxins that we take in from our food, from our environment, the UV rays, um, oxidants. You know how we take antioxidants. Well, certain oxidants at high levels, other toxins like pesticides and insecticides, and then
That
a lot
actually
of
kills our
alcohol.
cells.
Absolutely. And then things like smoking um, and too much alcohol, and so very, and then a lot of even pharmaceutical medications,
I was
too much of it.
I was just gonna ask you that because people say I don't do drugs because that kills your cells, and that actually I don't know if that's
Terminology.
the right terminology. I mean,
Yeah.
is that actually kills your cells when you do drugs? I mean, let's do hardcore drugs like
Right. Yes, you mean like recreational drugs, right? Yes. So, when they say it fries your brain, well,
yeah.
it kind of does. It kind of does in a way, because what happens is you're exposing your cells to these toxic elements and oxidants and things that are destroying the cell membranes of the cells and literally killing cells. Okay, so whether they're brain cells or organ cells, like in the case of COVID, it's like a toxin in the sense that with COVID, for instance, we don't get enough. We become hypoxic, which means that our cells aren't getting enough oxygen as much as they need. And when and our if you put an oximeter on, you would see that instead of your oxygen levels being in the high 90s or 100, they drop into the 80s and 70s. And sometimes we don't even realize it when we have COVID and that our oxygen levels are so low. And it's creating this hypoxic environment, which means there's not enough oxygen. So the cells are literally suffocating to death and dying. And the same thing happens with recreational drugs, and then and it takes on different forms also in terms of damage to the cells. But yes, it's pretty much creating damage and uh, degeneration.
I see. So, can you explain like the process, how stem cells can actually reverse aging?
Yes. So the stem cells are basically what stem cells do is they go in and they have an inherent capacity to regenerate themselves. And so what happens is when there are damaged cells in the body, there's these damaged cells produce inflammatory markers called cytokines. And these cytokines are specific for each type of a damaged cell. So if a heart tissue is damaged, a specific cytokine for the heart is released into the bloodstream, and when the stem cells are there, they detect the specific cytokine for that specific organ and that specific cell. And those stem cells hone in on where the damage is, and they go in and regenerate themselves on that tissue. And so we get this regeneration of an organ or a tissue or skin cells or eye tissue or whatever, brain tissue or whatever the case may be. Um, and that's pretty much how stem cells go in and regenerate themselves, and organs and tissues, damaged tissues, and we see ultimately an elongation of telomeres at the end of the DNAs of the cells, and we have anti-aging at the cellular level and regeneration and sort of a going back in time effect. And so that's how basically the stem cells work in doing this.
For this special treatment, the anti-aging treatment, uh, Where do you get the stem cells, or are they like special stem cells that we have to use for this procedure or treatment?
Yes, there are several different types of stem cells that we can use. We use typically endometrial stem cells, which come from female donors from the uterus of female young female donors. We also very commonly use bone marrow stem cells that are literally incubated and grown within the patient's own body about 3 days prior to harvesting. And so we have the numbers and fresh, new, toxin free stem cells available at our fingertips, and they're autologous, meaning that they come from the patient that they're going back into the same patient. And most patients prefer that. And then we also opt for umbilical cord cells if we feel the need to for it. However, now with our very cutting edge technology, we tend to move more towards the bone marrow and the endometrial stem cells for most of the treatments.
So when you say the stem cells from the bone marrow, it's like taking my own stem cells, but like doing an upgrade to them, something like that.
That's right. That's right. What we do is we sort of pre-treat the body and pre-treat the bone marrow a few days prior to harvesting and aspirating the bone marrow. And that pre-treatment allows for the stem cells to grow in vivo, which means that in the body. So they're literally growing in numbers and they're brand new stem cells free of toxins, and so we don't have to worry about anything contaminated. We don't have to worry about growing the stem cells in a lab, in an incubator, and possible contamination happening there. We negate all of these issues by doing it this way. And and we are, I believe that we're about the only clinic in the world that I know does it this way in order to prevent any kind of contamination or toxin issues with the stem cells. Having the numbers, and we're talking about hundreds of millions of stem cells, close to a billion in many cases, and we have the exosomes necessary as well as um, and the fact that the stem cells are autologous and coming from the patient's own body, which is a big plus for most of our patients.
I actually found a very interesting article by doing my research, and I want to read like a little passage back to you. It says Harvard study. This is actually a Harvard study. Scientists recently analyzed the blood of a woman who lived a healthy life up to the age of 115 years. They were surprised to discover that 64% of her blood cells were descended from only two different blood stem cells. And then it says something like, is this the key of longevity? What is that two different blood stem cells?
That is a very good question. So what I'm taking from that is that so there are blood stem cells, which are hematopoietic stem cells in the bone marrow, and then there are mesenchymal stem cells. So in this case,
Okay.
they're talking about the hematopoietic stem cells. I'm not quite sure which ones in particular, the two different hematopoietic stem cells. Um, but you bring up a really good point because a lot of patients ask about the bone marrow stem cells and how effective they would be for a treatment that is meant to be regenerative and not necessarily treating the blood. And so you brought up a good point here, and that is that in the bone marrow, as I mentioned, there are two types of stem cells: the hematopoietic, which are blood stem cells, which really are not of any use for us in terms of regenerating or um, undoing damage in a degenerative condition. Those types of stem cells that we would use for that would be called the mesenchymal stem cells. and not the hematopoietic. The hematopoietic tend to be stem cells that we would use for blood cancers, leukemias, things like that. Okay, so so there is a distinct difference. And so where they're in this regard, where they're talking about the 115-year-old woman with two different types of blood cells, they're talking about hematopoietic stem cells, and they're that those two stem cells are playing a role, could have been playing a role in her longevity. And I guess that is yet to be determined as to how.
Yeah, that was you actually answer my question because I was gonna ask you if those cells were stem cells.
Hematopoietic.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
So I'm having
Yes,
difficult
okay.
saying that word. But yeah, it actually I can see that you know what you're talking about, doctor. Totally. So there you have it. The stem cells can actually slow down the aging process. And how you place these stem cells, doctor? You do it intravenously.
Yes, that's
Yes.
right, Louise. What we do is one of the biggest ways to do it for when we're looking for sort of an overall body effect. We do the stem cells IV intravenously with mannitol, and that mannitol is a natural sugar. And what that does is it allows the stem cells to penetrate the blood-brain barrier and basically get into the brain without any sort of barriers. And and then we also do an intranasal aspiration with it, which is almost like a nose spray of stem cells that again bypass the blood-brain barrier and get to the brain. And of course, with the IV, we get the stem cells to every single cell of the body where the blood flows, because it's going into the bloodstream. And then in individual cases where we need to do local injections, we'll do local injections. Like if we need to do joints or skin or specific tissues, we will do that also.
Okay. So none of these treatments are gonna make you eternal. You're not gonna live forever. You can actually live longer and healthier, especially healthier. Since we all are looking for different ways to stay healthier.
That's right. And prolonged quality of life, a prolonged
Exactly.
quality of life.
So by the end of this podcast, you will find all the information how to contact the doctor. But doctor, is there anything else you would like to add to this podcast?
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, Louise.
All right. So there you have it, folks. We can live healthier and longer with the stem cells treatments. This is a weekly podcast. If you like it, please recommend the podcast to all your family and friends. And we will be more than glad to answer your questions if you send an email to Dr. Sarah Figueredo. I'll see you next week.
Yes, thank you so much, Louise. It was lovely speaking with you today.
Okay, you take care.
Thank you too. Bye bye.
If you want to contact us at the Stem Cell Healing Institute or Dr. Sarah Figueredo, you may do it by calling us. In North America, you may dial +1 209 690 7836. Also, if you want to write us by WhatsApp, you may add +502 4220 7297. Please send us an email at info@stemcellhealinginstitute.com. And don't forget to visit our website, stemcellhealinginstitute.com. Also, if you like to recommend our treatments, you may find us on Facebook at Stem Cell Healing Institute. Please follow us on Instagram at StemCellHI. If you want to recommend this podcast, please refer to anchor.fm/stemcellhealing. Also, you may find us with that very same name on Spotify. If you want to watch our videos, please go to Dr. Sarah Figueredo. That is on YouTube. Thank you.